Hello, everybody. This is audio from a book a month. We'll be starting our open class about Murakami in a few minutes, okay? Just waiting for everybody to come in. Hello, everybody. This is audio from a book a month. We'll be starting our open class about Murakami in a few minutes, okay? Just waiting for everybody to Hi, guys. Grabbing my coffee before the class. Indispensable, right? Welcome you all. We'll start in 1 minute, okay? Okay, guys, I think we can start. After 5 minutes, today's Saturday, right? So, so it's better to be tolerant with time. But I'm Audio. Nice to meet you. I'm one of the teachers here in a book a month. And the other teacher and founder, actually, of the school is Anna, who is right there. We are both the two people behind a book a month, and we're teaching literature using English. So practicing a foreign language, practicing conversation, at the same time learning literature. It's something we have been doing for the past 2.5 years, perhaps since the start of the pandemic. And Anna has a long experience with teaching English and literature at the university. So it's something we discussed for a few years, and then with the pandemic, we decided to start our own school. Okay, so Anna, would you like to introduce yourself? We start with you.
I'm just gonna mute your audio because we are in the same house, right? As you may imagine. So technological problems might happen during this time. So hey everyone, I was the one talking to you through WhatsApp and through Instagram as well. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for your presence here. It's so lovely to see a full house. And I hope you enjoyed reading the short story. And I think the first and the last a book a month open class was with me, right? We did a class on Ernest Hemingway, and this one is with audio, so you know both of us teaching. You have experience with us in our methods with teaching, so you get to know a little bit more about how a book a month works. So feel most welcome. And I'll be here on backstage. If you have any questions, anything that you would like to ask, I'll be here on chat and also on YouTube, right? So if you have someone who is watching us through YouTube, you can ask them to ask questions. I will be able to answer live, okay? So just let me know. All right, so that's it. Audio, the mic is yours.
Okay, so let's do it, guys. Let me share my screen with you. Just a second. Can you see it? Yep. Okay, great. So today we'll be talking about a short story by Murakami, which is someone that is clearly not writing in English, right? So he's Japanese. I guess everybody has noticed it already, right? Superfrog Saves Tokyo. It is my personal favorite. That's why we chose it for the open class. And we chose it to show you guys something we try to practice in a book a month, which is offering an horizontal view about global literature. So when we study literature at school, we usually do it by separating it by countries, right? So we study Brazilian literature because we are in Brazil, but if we were in Italy, we would be studying Italian literature, right? So there are ties between art and nationalism. And this is one way to go, but there are many others. And one of the ways we could use to study anything, actually. It could be to study art or literature, but it could be to talk about soccer. Perhaps you like soccer. You don't care only about Brazilian soccer. Perhaps you like also about, you care about the soccer in Europe, soccer in other parts of the world. And the same thing applies to literature. So one of the things that we try to do here is to talk about global literature. So literature from all around the globe, and therefore the Japanese are also included. So are the Africans, so are the Asians in general, or Americans from all of the Americas, right? And obviously Europeans. So we try to pull out authors and texts from many different traditions. We find them artistically interesting and also culturally engaging, right? And so before we start discussing this text, I think I would like to present myself and Anna. So Anna is the founder of A Book a Month. She has been teaching here since the beginning. She's a postdoc, okay, now in São Paulo at Mesila, which is part of a German research association. She's a PhD in comparative literature. a title she earned in Brazil with an exchange program in Germany as well. She lived in Potsdam for a year, and she's a master's in literature, okay, finishing it in the University of Sheffield mostly, but with exchange programs in Santiago de Compostela and also in Lisbon, Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Okay, and I myself, I'm also teaching in a book a month. I'm a PhD in comparative literature in the University of Padua in Italy, and I've also taken my master's in Italy, in Bologna mostly, but also with 2 semesters of exchange in France and Greece. And I'm the host of a podcast about literature and medicine, which is called Literatura Viral. You can find it for free in Spotify or Apple if you like it. And I talk about the history of medicine and art. It's pretty crazy. So you're like, what? Medicine and art? Yes, I know. So you can check it out if you think it's absurd. And what is exactly a book a month? So perhaps some of you have seen it, our call for the open class in Instagram. Perhaps you thought it was interesting to read and discuss something in English. Perhaps you're a huge fan of Murakami. That's great. Who is not, right? So a book a month is a school that tries to tie 2 things together. One of them is using literature as authentic material, right? So when we learn a foreign language, often we struggle to find opportunities to actually use it, right? We focus too much in the final product rather than using it as a tool to get somewhere else, right? So one of the things we try to practice here is we decide to learn literature because we love reading, we love philosophy, we love history, and we love to talk about those things. And we do that by using foreign language. So we do that to learn about these issues, to learn about literature. But while we do it, we're using English, and therefore we're practicing our language both passively, because you're listening to me right now, you have heard the short story, but also actively, because the classes are 100% in English, and you force yourself you have to find a way to express yourself, right? To find the correct words and expressions. And we try to negotiate some space between these 2 places, practicing language and acquiring language and polishing your English, and at the same time learning about literature and culture in general, art. Okay, so this is a book a month. We have 2 different types of courses. One in which we read entire books, so we would call it novels, and we have classes using intermediate books and classes using advanced material, so a little bit more difficult. Everything is in the original. Everything. We don't use any adaptations. We don't use any abridged versions. Okay, so we only use the real stuff. But we like to divide it in intermediate and advanced. So and this is where the name of the school came from, because the idea is we read a book a month. So you would get to 12 in the end of the year. But we also have a different course, which is called short stories, which is the one we will be drawing from today. So the idea of short stories is precisely this one. We meet every week, and then you read a short story. Usually it's 5-10 pages long maximum. So you have short readings and a lot of discussions because we meet weekly. On the other hand, in the novels course, since we have to read longer excerpts, right? We have to read sometimes 50 pages, sometimes 100 pages. So we meet once every 2 weeks, so twice a month, and classes are a little bit longer for us to have enough time for the discussions. Usually it's a lot of fun when we try to be very easygoing and find jokes and stuff like that, because I do think that humor is something very important pedagogically. It gives us, we get relaxed. If we're having fun, we learn so much more, right? So it's something that we should use so much more in university, for example. We do use it in high school, I think. I had many funny teachers when I was in high school, but not so much when I was at taking my bachelor's in university. Okay, so just for you guys to get to know the school, these are the books we'll be reading in the second semester. Many classics. Jane Austen, we'll start with Persuasion, and E.M. Foster. We'll read Agatha Christie. And you can see here that we even have an Italian author, okay, Elena Ferrante, which is amazing. It's a contemporary writer. Nobody knows who she is, right? So there's even a flair of mystery there. So we'll be reading it in translation in English, and we analyze the translations carefully, right? Not now with Murakami, unfortunately. I don't know Japanese, my bad. But I do know Italian, and I do know that this is a good translation. Okay, so this will be the novels we'll be reading in the advanced course, and the novels we'll be reading in the intermediate course. Everything is real material, right? And one of the things we do is we organize our readings by themes or by genre. So here we'll be talking about different types of love. Okay, so romantic love, love stories that go well and love stories that do not. While in here, we'll be talking about a transition in genres. So we'll start with ghost stories, and then we'll move into sci-fi, aliens, and quite funny texts. Like these last two, they're amazing. They're hilarious. Right? So, and Lovecraft is great. So yeah, we choose the readings very carefully. And finally, in the short stories, we organize it by authors, actually, rather than by entire books. We choose usually 2 short stories per person. And therefore, we'll be reading also from, this time, a lot of Americans in here. Shirley Jackson, Ellen Poe. Shirley Jackson is writing many ghost stories. Nabokov is Russian. Chinua Achebe is Nigerian and writes directly in English. He's incredible. One of the most important authors from Africa, actually. Roald Dahl, Ursula Le Guin is writing sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi. So it will be pretty interesting. And there are more authors, and I just quoted those. Okay. Yes, Anna.
I don't know if you know Roald Dahl, but he was the one who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the big, what was the BIG, the big something giant. It's very nice. And also Matilda, that one that has like the kid that has like interesting powers, but he's also a versatile writer, and he composes other kinds of stories that are not only meant for children. He's a very nice writer. So I would check it out if I were you. Thank you.
Okay. So now we can get finally to Murakami after this, the introduction. Murakami is so well known that I don't really have to introduce him. And it's something that we don't do a lot. This is one of the things that we try to do is take a different approach to literature. And sometimes we'll start like today by discussing the author, but sometimes we go straight to the text and do the opposite. Rather than going up bottom, we go bottom up. So it depends. It depends. Every time we'll choose different strategies. Murakami has won a lot of different literary prizes. He has written so much. I guess, in fact, I know many of you here today have already read several of his books. And even if you're a huge fan, probably you haven't read even half of it, because there's so much. The guy is like, he does not sleep. We all know that. Probably he's a cyborg or something. So he won all these prizes, not the Nobel Prize, unfortunately, not yet. We all know that the Nobel has its problems, right? And so some singer probably won on his behalf, right? But it could happen at any moment. I think Murakami was born in 49 in a Japan that was recovering from the war, severe economic depression, occupation by the US. And I do think we can see some signs of this in his work in general. He has some, we can find some patterns in his oeuvre. For example, cats, right? He's very famous for being in love with cats, and we see this in many of his stories, or the women that disappear, things like that. So we do see certain patterns and things he's interested about, right? Perhaps his most famous works are these three, right? Norwegian Wood is from the 70s. It is the book, I think is his fifth or sixth book, so he had already written quite a lot, but it is with Norwegian Wood that he became quite famous. And Kafka on the Shore is also a big name, 1Q84, a clear reference to 1984, right? He took the 9 and kind of put it to sleep, right? So we can see that his in a dialogue with dystopic fiction of the West, and Kafka as well, right? So it makes Kafka on the Shore, for example, makes a lot of sense, because this idea of the surreal, the nonsensical, it's quite present in his work, and we've seen this in our short story, right? I mean, a giant frog is not something you encounter in your living room every day, right? So this short story, the Superfrog Saves Tokyo, came from this book, okay, After the Quake. This is the name in English, but I know in Japanese, its title, it's quite different. If I'm not mistaken, it's something like All of God's Children Can Dance, or something like that, okay? So it is taken from one of the stories. This the third short story is actually entitled like that, All God's Children Can Dance. So I'm not very sure why they changed the title. Probably because the earthquake of Kobe in 1995 is something that unifies all these stories. So we follow, in the 6 short stories, we follow characters whose lives are 100% impacted by this event, by the earthquake. Not directly. Many times they don't see it, they just heard about it, they have not lived through the earthquake, but their lives is shattered and it changes completely. So we have this thematic background that unifies all the stories. And actually, in our short story, Superfrog Saves Tokyo, we don't even get to see the earthquake, right? But the book was written after the Kobe earthquake. Japan is quite famous for lots of earthquakes and for having infrastructure that can deal with it, right? So they're famous for the high-tech buildings that can resist natural disasters, things like that. But this one was so big and so large that it caused a lot of havoc, a lot of loss of life. So this picture became very famous. So this is a highway that collapsed, right, with all the trembling. So it was a pretty traumatic experience for Japan-wide, I think. And 1 month later, there was a terror gas attack in the subway in Tokyo. So these two events got mixed, perhaps in the Japanese imagination, and that's exactly the things Murakami is discussing in this short story. He even actually wrote his first book of essays called Underground, so nonfiction, right? Precisely to discuss the earthquake and this terrorist attack in Tokyo, okay? Which was nothing connected to Islam, okay? It was not connected to Arabs in any way. It was a Japanese religious sect that tried to kill people using poisonous gas in the underground, okay? So I'll talk a little bit about some elements in the short story. Then we have a few questions for you guys and a few activities for you to engage in discussion. Sometimes we choose to this path. Okay, we talk before, and then we give you guys, I don't know, half an hour, for example, to discuss together, or we do the opposite. You talk first and we talk later, or we do both at the same time with brief intermissions, right? Yes, Anna.
I just wanted to ask you guys if you knew Haruki Murakami before coming to this class, or if this was like the first time that you were reading a short story by him. Is it the first time? You can speak up. Just open your mic if you want to, or if you want to use chat to write your answer.
I heard about him, but I never read nothing. The short story was my first reading.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I've read some of his books.
All right, cool. Which ones? Kafka on the Shore, Norwegian Wood?
No, now I forgot it. I saw the book I read and the audio slides. The Sputnik one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I read a kind of an autobiography.
The one that he talks about running.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
these are the
cool.
ones
Are
I
you a
remember.
runner?
I'm not at all. Yeah, but actually, it's not. He talks about running, but about other things as well. Yeah.
All right.
And
cool.
I saw the movie Norwegian Wood,
Yeah.
and it's very, I would say, just like his most of his stories, like surreal.
Real. Yes. Good, Chris. Thank you.
Thank
Amanda,
you, Anna.
please.
Hi guys. Funny thing, actually, I'm reading Kafka on the Shore, and I think that's why the Instagram algorithm kind of dropped this post for me, and then I was like, oh, funny. Then I just came here, so that's it.
Cool. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I'm actually halfway through it. This has been on my to be read list for a while. I've just finished The Lost Daughter, and then I was looking at my list and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this one a chance. And then I started reading it, and it's been very, very nice so far.
Letícia.
Yeah, I knew him already. I'm kind of a fan, actually. One of my favorite books is Incolor Tsurukitazaki, Zonas de Peregrinação. I think it's my favorite book. And I've read Sputnik, My Dear Sputnik. I've read the short stories that the movie is based on. I have also read, and I didn't know before I watched the movie, actually. So I was like, I know this story, but it's a bunch of stories together, and it's also nice. I know Sono. I don't know. I read them in Portuguese, but I've read some of them, and I love it.
Very nice, very nice.
Great. Yeah, he's a phenomenon, right? I think editorially, it has, I can't remember any Japanese writer that has been so widely read all around the world, like really selling millions of copies, right? And it's interesting because there is a high literary value to it. So sometimes we see, it's not always bestsellers have great literary quality, right? So achieving both is not so common. Sometimes it happens, but not that often. So it really calls a lot of attention, right? And I think one of the things that is so typical Murakami, I think it calls so much attention to him, is precisely the patterns. He has a certain style and a certain tradition of referencing always the similar things, not always the same things, but similar things. So, oops. Yeah. So one of the things that I really love about Murakami, and I really enjoy this a lot, is his use of magical realism, right? This is an expression we often hear it when we're talking about Garcia Marquez or Borges or Cortázar, which are authors that are writing from Latin America, actually, right? So writing in Spanish. When we talk about 100 Years of Solitude, or Love in the Time of Cholera. So mostly Garcia Marquez, actually. We talk a lot about magical realism. Sometimes when we discuss the paintings of Frida Kahlo as well, sometimes you can see historians of art or literary critics using this expression to talk about certain types of artistic products. And magical realism is using the fantastical or surreal elements in a recognizably ordinary setting. Sometimes these disparate elements sit comfortably alongside one another, and characters accept fanciful or supernatural occurrences as part of the everyday life. So if somebody starts suddenly fluctuating around, if it happens in my living room, I'd probably be super scared, right? Because it means something, I don't know, aliens, the CIA, I don't know, but something weird will be going on, right? But if someone starts to levitate and everybody thinks it's normal, it does not really call attention. Probably you're reading something, and it's probably magical realism. There are certain differences to surrealism, but that's definitely something that was born in the 60s, 50s, and 60s in Mexico, in Colombia, in Argentina. So it's mostly a Latin American thing, which really took the world by strike. So I really love the idea that Murakami, writing from Japan, is actually influenced by a tradition that is coming from Latin America as well. So he's combining a lot of stuff. Another thing that goes on is his usage of surrealism. So something that happened prior, something we all know, connected to Dali, dreams, Freud, right? Sexual desire all around. So we all have some certain surreal images in our heads from the movies, from paintings, etc. And this is also something very important for Murakami, but not only. Kobo Abe, for example, which is a writer more or less, they're more or less contemporary. Kobo Abe perhaps is a little bit older than Murakami, has written this novel, which is my favorite, my personal favorite. I don't know a lot about Japanese literature, not as much as I would like to know, but I read this novel a few years ago, and for me is the best work of Japanese literature I've read so far. The Woman in the Dunes, and it's very strange, very surreal. It's about a guy studying insects that is kidnapped by this woman. And it's very much in the same style, with using magical realism. So they are in a dialogue there. And the interesting thing about Kobo Abe is that he's using a lot of Kafka. So there's a big influence of Kafka, of Borges as well. So they're moving in the same direction of not necessarily receiving passively influence, but from Western literature, but actually engaging in a dialogue. The same thing can be said about Kenzaburo Oe, who has won the Nobel Prize for literature, and this novel, Nip the Butts, Shoot the Kids, it's super violent. I'm not a big fan of this book. It's a very, very well written, but I don't like a lot of violence when I read, but it's artistically super interesting. And he's also drawing a lot from myths, and a lot of surreal things happen. You don't really understand what is going on sometimes. So I find this very interesting, that they're engaging in a dialogue with the West, and at the same time producing something that is very authentic, and it is connected with many Japanese cultural ties. Another thing that is relevant to say about these books is that, as far as I know, they're not translated into Portuguese. So this is one of the reasons why we took to heart to teach literature in English. Actually, it opens so many doors, so many, because we cannot often rely in our translations. Even I was reading Sándor Márai, which is a Hungarian writer, a few months ago, and I was outraged to discover that the book was translated not from Hungarian but from German. and come on, it's not serious. If you do that, it's okay, but then tell me in the first page and I will not buy the book. But sometimes this happens in Brazil, unfortunately. Okay, one of the influences that we can see in his works are precisely the Beatles, right? So it's not only something tied to art and literature, but also the Beatles. And the Norwegian Wood is one of is a Beatles song, right? And there is Murakami has written a short story called "Drive My Car," which is the name of a Beatles song, or "Honey Pie," right? So there is a dialogue over there. He's a huge fan. He's also a huge fan of opera. So sometimes we see many references to Wagner or Rossini in his narratives. Okay, and we can even see this dialogue going on in this short story. Is there any sign of this influence? Did you guys catch anything going on there?
He mentions a lot of writers, right? Like Nietzsche. Forgot now the other ones, but
Yeah,
he's always mentioning something. Maybe one of the bands were music, but this one there was a lot of writers mentioned.
yeah,
Another writer he mentions is Joseph Conrad.
yeah.
And the first thing that came to my mind when I started reading the story was Kafka.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yes, Amanda.
I was just adding up that he mentions Dostoevsky as well. He mentions, I think, Nietzsche as well, and even Hemingway. It was very interesting how in this book, this short story in particular, he goes for the writers, not the songs, like he does a lot in Kafka on the Shore. It
Yeah.
was pretty interesting.
And I love the fact that the one who is quoting from these authors and intellectuals, it's actually Frog, right? So you have this huge beast like quoting. So he's very learned, which is very nice as well, right? Yeah, we're used to see these in fables, right? So animals that talk, but we don't see animals that are so much into art as Frog is, right? So yes, you guys got it all. I think he talks about Anna Karenina, right? From Tolstoy. He quotes from Hemingway and Nietzsche. He mentions Dostoevsky. And it's really something that is going on, I think, in the 50s in Japan. I would like to learn more about it. Perhaps one day take a course of Japanese literature somewhere. Because when I'm a big fan of Akira Kurosawa, for example, and he's obsessed by Dostoevsky. He has adapted in the 50s novels by Tolstoy. So there's something going on there, right? A certain discussion, especially with the Russians, actually, right? So in this short story, we have basically two characters only, Katagiri and Frog. And that's all. We have the worm, but worm does not really appear, right? He's only mentioned. So it's a very minimalist story. And we get action since the very beginning, right? So Katagiri gets at home and we don't know anything about anyone. We don't know where he lives, what he's doing, and then there's Frog. So we start with this absurd situation in which a huge frog comes to invite Katagiri to help him save Tokyo, right? So very minimalist, but also very creative in a certain sense with this dramatic scene, right? And they sip some tea together, right? So and kind of make friends over a cup of tea, which is pretty nice. Why not? We all love tea. I would rather prefer coffee, but tea is cool too. And before we go into what happens, or better, can you guys refresh my mind? What does happen in the story? Can somebody give me a summary, perhaps, or we can try together to get a summary?
Okay, I'll start. Katagiri is a very ordinary Japanese man who has a very ordinary job, and he sees himself as ordinary or less than that.
Mm-hmm. So the ordinary guy meets frog. What happens next?
Frog, I'm sorry, Amanda.
No, you can go first. It's okay.
Thank you. Frog asked him for help because there's a worm under the ground, and that worm was causing will cause the earthquake. So he needs his help. That's basically.
Yeah. What exactly will Katagiri be doing?
Well, that's what he kind of asks himself. It's like, I'm an ordinary man. I work at a bank. How can I help? And then he just, the frog tries to convince him, telling him that he's the exact kind of person that he needs, that this is for this kind of people like Katagiri, and they go into this discussion of how is this going to come out, how they can defeat the worm, and then the frog proceeds to show him how he's real and how he can be useful by helping Katagiri his job with the mob and the mafia, something like that.
Yeah. So we get this interesting element, right? The hidden threat. We have the real underground worm, and then we have this underground world of the mafia, a little bit more symbolic, right? But Frog can deal with both, right? The real underground and the metaphorical underground. Great. So he gives the guys a bad handling, right? So he solves the mafia situation, and therefore proved he's real. What happens next? Go ahead, Gregory.
Well, then something unexpected happens, right? Seems like our hero to be suffers an accident and he's shot by a man. At least it seems so, and wake up at the hospital, right? And that's when he talks to the nurse, actually, and the nurse, and he asks about the earthquake, right? And she says that there's no earthquake, actually. It's like, okay, so am I crazy or what, right?
Yeah.
And a few hours later, our frog appears once more to tell him that everything kind of worked out, right? Not exactly, but and then it worked, but the frog kind of got hurt by the worm. And then I think Leticia also wants to say something, so I'm gonna leave the rest to her.
What happens next, Leticia? Thanks, Gregory.
No, go ahead. It's just a comment, actually, because there is a foreshadowing in with the mafia thing, and he mentions Frog mentions about the mind terror. So everything happens in the mind, actually. And he mentions about the importance of that. So, and that's what will happen next on the real story. So it's only to mention this foreshadowing of the plot.
Yeah, great comment. And then I love the ending, right? Because we have this crazy transformation, like Frog is eaten up from the inside, right? And then we realize that it's just a vision of some sort, right? And we end up with this very touching scene, actually. The nurse realizes it all, realizes that he's in some kind of delirium, but she accepts that, right? She's like, oh, so good. I'm happy that the frog managed to do it. So rather than contradicting Katagiri or saying you're insane or whatever, she's very nice, very humane. And so we have this heartwarming touch at the end, right? And then we're left to wonder what actually happened here. Was this for real? Was this entirely imagined? What is going on, right? And I think a Japanese will look at this story probably from a different angle. I didn't know this when I read the story for the first time, but actually, since the 19th century at least, there is this story about a huge catfish that is hidden underneath the center of Japan, right? So a story that ties earth trembling, right? So earthquakes, basically, several types of natural disasters, but especially earthquakes, to the movements of this giant monster, which is this crazy catfish, okay? That is buried underneath central Japan. We see many images from the 19th century and even 18th century that depict this this myth, this legend, if we want to call it this way, this tale. But I think it was born on the 16th century. There's no notice of it's not traditional Japanese folklore in this sense that, you know, it's like as old as time, but it's something that probably was created 300 or 400 years ago. Okay, and this giant catfish is called namazu or onamazu. So in Japanese mythology, the namazu or onamazu is a giant underground catfish who causes earthquakes. The creature lives under the islands of Japan and is guarded by the god Takemikazuchi, enshrined at Kashima, who restrains the catfish with a stone. So you have this god that is, by the way, the guy who invented sumo. Okay, so he's the first sumo fighter. And he managed, I don't know if he was fighting sumo, but he managed to control this huge catfish and place the huge stone on the top of it. And therefore restrains it for most of the time, so it does not cause so much havoc and destruction. When the Kashima god lets his guard fall, however, Namazu thrashes about, so he moves, causing violent earthquakes, right? And we even have, so this is the Namazu over here, okay? This is an image from 1855 when an important earthquake hit what was then called Edo, nowadays Tokyo, and caused a lot of destruction. And we even see in the image the fish moving, the city trembling and then catching fire, because usually fire was the consequence, right? The reverberations of the earthquake. And the god is sleeping, right? I have no idea what is going on here with the kind of a cat devil who is shooting coins. I don't really understand what is going on, but yeah, it's lovely. So this is one of the great things about literature and about global literature, that it offers us an opportunity, a window into other cultures and other ways of thinking and experiencing the world, right? So perhaps if we were reading this story and some cultural knowledge was required from, if we were reading it in Portuguese by a Brazilian author, for example, and we needed some cultural background, we very likely would have it. A Japanese certainly knows about this story. So when he hears about a giant worm inside Earth that causes earthquake, it's something that is tied with everyday life. And for us, it might sound as a very different idea. I didn't know about this myth, for example. And one interesting, just a curiosity actually, is that there is a superstition in Japan that ties, probably because of this monster, that says that catfish have the ability to predict earthquakes. So if they are like moving too much, for example, or behaving erratically, people could, in theory, know that an earthquake is about to happen. Okay, and this superstition is important enough for it to be tested in the 1930s by a team of scientists in Japan who published this, and I'm not joking, this is real, okay? Sensitivity of fish to earthquakes in Nature, not any scientific magazine, Nature, okay? And their hypothesis is that they could in fact predict serious tremblings in experiments 80% of the time. And their ideas is that their hypothesis is that there is some sort of something magnetic going on. So quite interesting. It could be that catfish are actually sensible after all. Okay, and this brings us to another usage of animals in literature, Animals often appear as harbingers of destruction, of disaster. Okay, a harbinger is an early sign of something is going on. So I don't know, a comet, for example, could be a harbinger of, I don't know, the plague, for example, in the Middle Ages or so, something like that. And in literature, we see this a lot in Homer, in the epic poetry of the Greeks, of the Romans. Okay, we see this in Brazilian literature, in Vidas Secas, for example. We see this in the USA. Their Eyes Were Watching God, which is an amazing novel, one of the best novels written in the 20th century in the US. Zora Neale Hurston. Most people never heard about her, which is a pity because she's insane. She's so talented. So if you guys are looking for something interesting to read, that's your thing, okay? Alongside Kobo Abe and, well, I could go on for ages here. I wanted to give you an example of this. This is an image by Raphael, so the Renaissance painter. And it's called, in English, it's called The Plague in Crete. Often you see it like this in books, but actually it's in Italian, it's called Il Morbetto, so the little plague, okay? And it's representing a scene in an epic poem in Latin. And we see here that people are starting to get sick. We see already a mother that is dead and a child that is trying to suckle her milk, for example. Oops, sorry. We see there are horses, the cow is dying, calves are already dead. So we see here clearly that once the epidemic starts, animals die first as a sign that humans will follow next, right? So they are harbingers of disaster in this sense. Yes, Anna.
Now, just Chad's comment actually reminded me of that TV series. I don't know if you, well, it's an anime. I don't know if you watched it or if you know of it. Mushishi. Have you ever heard of it? It's a great anime and it's one of my favorites for sure. And there are some episodes that they present very clearly this idea of animals as harbingers or as forewarners of disaster. Because they actually introduced something very similar to what Chadi was saying in the comments, but concerning tsunamis, right? So when there's, they have like an imminence of a tsunami, a lot of mushis that resemble birds, they appear in the beach. So it's amazing. People, if Amanda knows it, it's amazing. If you never watched it, please do. I think you will love it. I think Audio also talked about this in one of your webinars in the past with Academia Magica, right, Audio? Probably, yeah, very good.
Okay, guys, so here's a passage for us to ponder about. When Frog is talking about worm, Katagiri is puzzled, right? So worm, who is worm? He asked with some hesitation. The answer: worm lives underground. He's a gigantic worm. When he gets angry, he causes earthquakes, Frog said. And right now he's very, very angry. What is he angry about? Katagiri asked. I have no idea, Frog said. Nobody knows what worm is thinking inside that murky head of his. Few have ever seen him. He's usually asleep. That's what he really likes to do, take long, long naps. He goes on sleeping for years, decades, in warmth and darkness underground. His eyes, as you might imagine, have atrophied. His brain has turned to jelly as he sleeps. If you ask me, I'd guess he probably isn't thinking anything at all. Okay, so worm is empty. Worm is passive and inactive. He only stirs and moves to cause earthquakes, but most of the time he's not doing anything. There's no purpose to his life. He's not even eating. He's just hibernating eternally, right? This is something important, but I would like you to keep this idea aside. So, you know those cooking shows in TV when you prepare the salad and then you have to put it aside and then prepare the rest and then you get everything together. So that's exactly what we're doing now. We're putting this idea aside and we'll get back to it. But before we go on, I want to ask you guys, is Katagiri a hero? What is going on here?
I like the drawing. I don't know if he's like the usual hero, but in his head he might be, because he was there cheering for Frog, even though he doesn't remember. But when Frog talks about what happened, he was there, so he helped someone.
Yes, Amanda.
I don't know if he is much of a hero on the sense of like hero as we see on movies and things like that, but I do think that he has sort of a heroic figure, and he gives us this impression through the eyes of Frog, because Frog sees him as a hero, as somebody that can have an impact on the world and on this huge fight that's going on. And just a little addendum here, I think it's kind of like what the author does a lot in his stories, right? He has this habit of picturing the individuality of people as something to be seen as a remarkable thing about people. Like we're not just ordinary people. Our individuality is to be celebrated, is to be shone a light upon. And I think this is kind of what makes him a hero. Maybe not the usual hero, but still a hero in the sense of the story.
Okay. Yes, Gregory.
Yeah, by having read some other Murakami's stories, I would say that he's the Murakami-wise, he's a real hero. Yeah, because Murakami usually takes these broken characters and make them into heroes. There's a character that I really like from, I'm not sure, it was Kafka on the Shore, I think. I don't remember. It's an old man who talks to cats. And like he's an old man, and he's trying to do his best, trying to help the cats, trying to, I'm not gonna say much, yes, or I will spoil the story, but there's something I really like about Murakami's stories. So yes, Murakami wise, I would say he's a hero.
Okay, nice. Any other ideas? So I think we agree that he's a hero at some level. He's not the usual hero, right? Because when you go watch Marvel, like if you go watch Superman, and then Superman is not doing the fighting, he's just like watching and go guys, yes. This is not what we would call a hero, right? So not in our idea of what a hero usually is the one doing the fighting. So in this sense, it should be Frog, right? Yes, Anna.
I just wanted to ask you a question, and it's a tough philosophical one, right? Does the faith people put in you make you more courageous and braver? Do you think that the faith that Worm has written on Katagiri made him like the true hero that he was?
Very good question. Very, very good question. We have the powerful guy, the guy who can actually beat Worm, but he cannot do it without the aid and assistance of Katagiri. And Katagiri first does not know that he himself has this ability, and second does not even remember the fighting, right? If it happened. So it's a twist. It's playing on our expectations on what a hero is and what it does. But we do get one characteristics about Katagiri that shows us that he's not common stock. There is one of his characteristics that actually match the character of a hero. Does anyone remember that? Yes, Amanda.
I think maybe you're mentioning his selfless personality, that he does a lot to other people and he's not expecting anything in return, and that's pretty heroic, right? That's a pretty hero characteristic to have, I think.
Yeah, I think he's not afraid of being harmed, and he's not afraid of death, right? So the mobsters, they threaten him in a few occasions, and he does not get anxious. He says at some point, well, I'm just a guy working for the bank. Why would they kill me? It doesn't make any sense. So he keeps calm, and the mobsters are the ones that get anxious, because why is this guy not feeling threatened, right? So he's a tough one. He has something. He has power. He knows something you do not, right? So in this sense, he's as hard as steel, right? Yes, Gregory.
Yeah, I would say that he's selfless. That's right, what Amanda said. But I think he thinks a bit like that because he doesn't see much of himself, right? Because he's like, oh, okay, if I die tomorrow, what am I gonna lose? I don't have any relatives or anything like that. So he's ready to sacrifice himself for a cause. He just doesn't have any cause. I mean, he didn't, right? The story.
Yeah. And that's one of the paradoxical things about it. When we watch, it's Armageddon, that the guy explodes the thing in the end, and he dies and saves planet Earth, and etc. And sometimes you're watching it and your eyes will fill with tears, right? Oh, it's so beautiful. He's killing himself to save the planet. And the basis for this assumption is that he's giving up on a lot of things. He's not going to see his daughter again. He's destroying something that is very valuable for him to save everybody else, right? But with Katagiri, there is a paradox there, because in the basis of his life is empty, is senseless in this sense. So it is true that he's constantly he's thinking on others. He does not see a lot of worth upon himself, because he does not see a lot of worth in his life. So yeah, if I lose it, I'm not losing much, right? And this is very paradoxical. It's quite sad, actually, right? Very melancholic in a certain sense, but very, very paradoxical. It's not what we would be expecting from our main hero, right? And so we have to think about honor and valor, about Katagiri the Great. Sorry, guys, we took some liberties here, right? Can anyone help me with the reading this time?
Just another comment before you move on. Although he can be seen as a hero, yes, I agree with what everybody has said. The hero is expected to be the one who dies, like in the Armageddon. Yeah, but in the story, who dies is Frog, and not him. Yes.
That's true. Yeah, very good comment. Yeah. So yeah, it's showing how he's manipulating our expectations, right? And the words and how we use it usually. Yeah, very nice comment. Thank you. Okay, who can help me with the reading, please?
I can.
Okay, please, Karini.
Okay. Honor and valor, Katagiri the Great. Nor it's simply a matter of your work. After your parents died, you raised your teenage brother and sister single-handedly, put them through college, and even arranged for them to marry, all at great sacrifice of your time and income, and at the expense of your own marriage prospects. In spite of this, your brother and sister have never once expressed gratitude for your efforts on their behalf. Far from it. They have shown you no respect and acted with the most callous disregard for your loving kindness. In my opinion, their behavior is unconscionable. I almost wish I could beat them to a pulp on your behalf. But you, meanwhile, show no trace of anger. Can I continue? Yes? To be quite honest, Mr. Katagiri, you're nothing much to look at, and you are far from eloquent. So you tend to be looked down upon by those around you. I, however, can see what a sensible and courageous man you are. In all of Tokyo, with its teeming millions, there is no one else I could trust as much as you to fight by my side.
Great, thank you so much. Right. So this is a great example of this validation. We have our strong guy we have our hero in the traditional sense, but the hero put all his faith in this other guy he sees it as above himself. And one of the ways to play around with the ideas is precisely to find the valor of everyday life, right? So why heroes have to be making such great sacrifices and stuff? Why not the small everyday sacrifices that many of us actually do in our daily lives? Why are these less valuable? So we're seeing someone here who is really helping everybody else and not taking much thought upon it, actually, and not bragging, okay, not boasting, not thinking he's the best because of this, just doing what he's supposed to do. So this is perhaps at the same time his virtue and his vice. Not thinking on himself is great from one perspective, but is also a problem from the other perspective, because it is giving him senselessness, it's giving him emptiness, right? And therefore he's not afraid of death, he's not afraid of dying, and that's why he's seen as stuff as heroic, right? One thing that is going on, I don't know why my slides are always going back. One thing that is going on here is something that has been discussed a lot in the past years, a call to action, right? Coaches have discovered this terminology, unfortunately, right? So coaches love this. This is something that has been literary professors have been discussing since the 1980s, okay? The journey of the hero. And it's an idea proposed by Campbell in the 80s. It is fairly criticized, actually. We use it, it's useful to describe, especially, but if you want to see folklorists, okay, people who study myths, legends, folklore in general. So if you want to see folklorists fighting in a gang fight, okay, you just have to go to a convention and talk about the journey of the hero. That's all you see, like chairs flying, people beating each other. So it's very interesting, like academic fights, okay? So what is the journey of the hero? In narratology and comparative mythology, the hero's journey, or the monomyth is how Campbell calls it, is the common template of stories that involve a hero who goes on an adventure, is victorious in a decisive crisis, and comes home changed or transformed. So usually it goes this way. Odysseus is at his house, and then he receives a letter calling him to an adventure. Let's go to war, etc. In order to do that, he needs some type of potion to survive a magician. At some point, he will have to go to the underworld to talk to the souls of the dead, and talk about the future. So this is the scene in which he is in the abyss. At some point, it will appear that he died. Every superhero movie, at some point, there must be the moment in which we all think, oh my God, now Spider-Man is gone. What will happen with all of us? And then, you were wrong. He was not that. No, Jon Snow, you're not gone, right? So then, haha, here I am. I did not die, and he returns triumphantly. And probably when he returns, he has acquired a new skill, probably a magical skill, probably escaping death, for example, like Frodo, for example, in The Lord of the Rings. In the end, he gains immortality. He goes to the land of those special creatures, like a Valhalla of some sort. So this pattern is something that we can see actually in a lot of myths, but it's not always this way. There are many variations. So this is why you should not take this as a gospel, but it's very, very useful, right? If we want to talk about stories like this, especially epic poetry, epic narratives, right? And so that's exactly what happens. Frog is the call to action. Let me come back. Yeah. So the call to adventure is precisely the presence of Frog. Frog is his supernatural aid they have to descend into the abyss to fight Worm. By doing so, they will be transformed, and they are actually transformed, and they return triumphantly. They have actually saved all of us, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. And this is it's a little twist. So he's playing around with some of the steps in this pattern that we all know. Actually, intuitively we all understand what is going on. If you're watching The Lord of the Rings and suddenly Frodo dies and the mission fails, and that's it, the end of the movie, you would be like, what a crappy movie. You know he has to win, right? If he does not win, the movie is a bad one. You would not like it. You want your money back. So Frog thinks Katagiri is a hero, and Katagiri does not believe him. So he gives him the resistance, right? So he disagrees. And this is also part of the journey, of the hero's journey, right? So can someone else read it for me, please?
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Katagiri.
I'm an absolutely ordinary guy, less than ordinary. I'm going bald, I'm getting a pot belly, I turned 40 last month. My feet are flat. The doctor told me recently that I have diabetic tendencies. It's been 3 months or more since I last slept with a woman, and I had to pay for it. I do get some recognition within the division for my ability to collect on loans, but no real respect. I don't have a single person who likes me either at work or in my private life. I don't know how to talk to people, and I'm bad with strangers, so I never make friends. I have no athletic ability, and I'm tone deaf, short, phimotic, nearsighted, and asthmatic. I live a horrible life. All I do is eat, sleep, and shit. I don't know why I'm even living. Why should a person like me have to be the one to save Tokyo?
Yeah. So if you're wondering about what writing on your CV for the next time you go to a job interview, perhaps you can imitate Katagiri, right? He's a true hero. So I mean, he's the opposite of bragging, right? He gives all his problems, all his vices are described quite frankly, right? And so he not only see that the narrator, the person who is actually telling us the story from a third wild view, so from the bird's eye, let's say, the narrator does not tell him he is not thinking about himself, right? Who says it is Frog, and then his actions, his words prove what Frog has said. Okay, so I find this very interesting. It rather than saying to us what Murakami, let's think about the writer here. What the writer is actually doing is showing it to us. You're not saying he is selfish. You're showing his selfish behavior, or in this case, selfishlessness, right? So he lacks selfishness. He lacks self-awareness in a certain sense. Okay, so he does not value his life. He's the one to say, I don't know why I'm even alive. Okay, and this brings us to the earthquake metaphor. Okay, or let me rephrase it. Could the earthquake be a metaphor? Because you see, the way he describes himself, he only eats, sleeps, and shits. He says he has no friends, he has nothing, he has lots of vices, he's hibernating in a certain sense, he has no reason to live. We have only 3 characters in this story, or perhaps 2.5, but this description could fit someone else as well. Don't you think?
In the warm underground or not?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like the.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're getting our salad back for dinner. Okay. That's pretty much a description of Worm as well. Worm is not doing much. Worm is just not even shitting or eating, he's just sleeping, right? So he's doing even less than Katagiri, but they're pretty much in the same direction here, right? They're both lives are senseless in a certain sense. Both lives are just going on passively and not doing much, not steering in any direction, right? And so perhaps the whole earthquake thing, the whole play on, is this really happening, or is this a dream, or is he mad? The whole thing could be a metaphor of some kind, okay? Perhaps criticism of Japanese culture, or perhaps criticism of the obsession to work and to have a career without thinking. For what? For what? Like, yeah, he needs money, but for what? Because what does he want to do with that? So a certain sense of lacking the self-awareness to inquire who I am, what I like, what should I be doing, is this the right path to achieve the things I want to achieve, right? So perhaps the whole play on the warm, the metaphor, the warm, the earthquake, and this correspondence that we can find there. Perhaps that's all a metaphor for to help us think about something that is actually more profound and more existential in this sense. Yeah, it sounds convincing to you. It could be this way, or you think it's because be aware of literature professors, okay, guys. They will be talking about, they will see crazy things sometimes, but I hope you guys agree with me here. It seems that their lives are not entirely the same, but they are similar in a certain sense, right? Yeah. Okay, let me see, what time is it? Oh, okay, we have only 10 minutes. Cool. Let me see. Yep. Okay. Now, usually in our classes, we go on talking in the short stories. The classes last for an hour and a half. So we would still have 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We would start a discussion and an activity. I think we'll not do it today because we won't have enough time. What do you think, Anna?
I think maybe we could try maybe for 15 minutes, just like to do some questions.
What do you think, guys? Do you still have 15
if you could
minutes?
extend, if you have time, if you could extend a little bit or stay here, we could separate you into smaller rooms. These rooms are not going to be live on YouTube. It's just you, okay? So you don't have to feel that you are observed on the internet, like the Big Brother. And then we come back here to finalize the class. What do you think?
And I would really love to, but I have to leave a little before 5, or at least 5. I'm really sorry about it.
All right. So you stay until when you can, Chris.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, because I don't want to sound impolite and leave without further notice. Yes.
All right.
Don't worry. Thank you.
So I will just send you a PDF through chat. Probably you will receive it. It's logging on.
Okay, so download it now, guys, and then we can, because I think when we divide you into groups, it will disappear probably, right?
Yeah. So also I can grant you like the ability the permission to share your screen while you are on the groups. And then you can share it and just like go through the questions. These are just suggestions of questions. If you want to talk about something else, don't mind us, okay? All right.
Can you create the breakout rooms?
Yes, I will create the breakout rooms. Okay, so you receive an invitation. You just have to join. Almost everyone has joined. So Jocelyn, maybe she will receive the invitation later. People from YouTube will still be here, so if you have any comments, I'm on YouTube with you, following the comments. So if you have anything that you want to say to Aula or to me, or if you have any questions about Haruki Murakami's short stories, please let us know, or anything that you want to ask about a book a month. Just use this time and I'll be here, okay? But no pressure. It's just a way to organize time. Hey everyone, welcome back. I never know visually how do these messages appear for you when I broadcast something. Just like appears on the screen?
It does. It kind of like a pop-up notification,
Cool. All right. Let's wait for the others. And we can go.
And you guys are fast, right? Like, wow, 4 questions in less than 10 minutes. Impressive. Yeah. Sometimes it happens that students, like, they start discussing the first question. It takes them, I don't know, like half an hour. So it's pretty cool because we never know what will happen next, right, with the discussions.
Yeah.
Welcome back, guys.
You're welcome.
And I'm still here.
Great.
I'm late for the next
Great,
appointment,
Chris.
but I'm here.
Thank you so much.
People, my mom has just joined us from YouTube. So, oi mãe, beijo.
Okay, guys. So this was a little bit what we do here in a book a month. I've joined both discussions, and they were very, very interesting, actually. I get that most of you, if not all of you, like the text. I'm a big fan as well of this short story. It's really, as Isabella was saying, it's trivial, but it's so well done, so well constructed. It offers us so many questions, some very profound ones, like even philosophical, if you want, like what is the nature of reality and things like that. What really happens? So we can get pretty down philosophical with it, but we can also just enjoy, have a laugh, because it is funny as well, right? So there are many good things over there, right? And I love this book. This book is the entire, all the short stories in this book is they're all awesome. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this experience. It was great to have you here. Great way to spend a Saturday afternoon. We will be starting our new classes next month. We'll start with these books, okay? And we'll talk about The Turn of the Screw in the intermediate course by Henry James, a big name, very, very important, very nice ghost story. And it kind of happens the same because you don't know if it's just psychological or if it's actually a ghost that is hunting them. So it's pretty cool. Persuasion by Jane Austen, which is our favorite Jane Austen. I know Anna agrees with me. Pride and Prejudice, sit down and learn, because the real book is Persuasion, right? So this one is pretty cool, about a love story that turns out to go well in the end. So it ends up with a marriage. And then in the short stories, we'll be reading Poe at the start, and then many other authors I've showed you guys in the beginning, right? So we'll have our introductory class on the 4th of October. It's also open, it's also free. It will be also on YouTube if you guys want to watch it later. So if you want to join live, you're more than welcome. Just you have Anna's contact in WhatsApp. Just let us know, or drop us a message in Instagram. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure.
People, thank you. We'll keep in touch because we're gonna have like other events in during this week and also the next one, right? And just like, so you know, and to be posted with whatever things that we post online, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because whenever we do start a live or whenever we plan something, you receive a message, a notification. And also on Instagram, because, well, I know nothing about digital marketing, right? But what I do know is that if you want to not be like losing our info in amidst the algorithm, you have to click on the little bell on our profile to be able to receive all our photos and everything that we post, right? Because otherwise it might be missed and you won't be able to see it. But whenever we have the chance of scheduling something new, we will send you messages just to keep you posted as well.
Yeah, we'll be posting the calendar, the time of the classes, and as well as the prices, everything today. Actually, after the class, that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so you can check it out for info later. That's all. Thank you so much, guys. It was a huge pleasure.
It was a great,
Have a great week.
pleasure to meet you. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See ya. Thank you,
See
Chris,
ya.
for staying until now.
Thank you. I'm still here to the end.
Run, girl.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I have to leave. Yes. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Karine. Bye, Gregory. Leandro.